call to order. This is the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting for November 13th, 2025. I am the co-chair, Councilmember Shanae Nicole Darby for the 2nd District. At this time, I will call roll for the members of the committee first. Councilmember Cabrera, our chair, has been excused. Shanae Darby, vice chair, is present. Is Councilmember Fields on the line?
Present.
Councilmember Hackett has been excused. Councilmember McCoy.
Here.
Councilmember Owens.
Present.
Councilmember Willauer.
Present.
And then Council President Congo.
Here.
Yeah, I did McCoy. Yes. Do we have any other council members who are not on the committee online with us today?
Yeah, Councilwoman Oliver.
Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Oliver. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. So we shall proceed with the agenda. We're actually going to move one of our pieces of legislation up. It's a resolution improving the bid of the best bidder for the disposition of the parcel of land known as 1331 Vandiver Avenue. And I know the sponsor is Councilmember Oliver. Councilmember Oliver, are you on?
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. This resolution approves the bid to the Family Thriving LLC for one parcel. It's located at 1331 Vandiver Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware, Newcastle County, tax parcel 2603 10-081. As the best bidder and authorize the mayor and the city clerk of their prospective designee to execute and any all documents necessary to dispose of such property. This is a company that has been working very diligently, her and her husband, to purchase this property. They have several other ones, and I'm not sure if they're there tonight.
They are here, and we'll give them a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Of course. Anyone on the committee have any questions at this moment or comments? Any other non-committee council members have any questions or comments? If not, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. Councilmember McCoy?
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I was just curious about, I didn't get a chance to go over the resolution. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Just curious about why this piece of property is actually being disposed of. Like, why are we, why is it on the disposition list? I'm just curious.
Yes. Yes, they've been working with Tom Ford for over a year and a half now.
Yes, and they're here tonight too, Councilmember McCoy. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to speak, and hopefully they can answer some of our questions. Because I have questions too, but I'm hoping that they get answered when they present and talk.
Okay, thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, so I'll call up Families Thriving LLC. I think they're here. The family. Oh, department. Okay, you're speaking to it. Okay, perfect. Come on up.
Sure. Thank you, council member and members of the committee. My name is Bob Weir. I'm the director of the Real Estate and Housing Department. To answer the question that was posed, this is a piece of property that's in the city's inventory that has federal funds that was invested in it. So that requires us to continue to monitor the property. So it is in the city inventory. Just a little background is that this property was declared as surplus in 2008. We put it out to RFP and it was not, it didn't have any interest in that particular piece of property. We ended up demolishing the property in 2010 because it was falling down, and we did that with federal funds. So the federal funds then traveled with the land. We advertised the RFP on the lot because we knew that Families Thriving had interest in it. We did that in July and August. of 25, or I'm sorry, in August of 25. When we looked at the CDBG regulations, we had a 7-day notice. We met all the requirements, I think is the bottom line of my comments, that was required. When we talked to the project sponsor, they are looking to build affordable rental on the site. The construction costs are estimated right now at $260,000, and the acquisition of the lot is $24,000. That is the appraised value of the lot. That allows for the federal funds to come back to the city as program income, and then it also reduces any ongoing requirements that would travel with the land otherwise. When we talk about the project time to completion is 9 to 12 months. When we look at the lead developer is the Tanya Associated Business Services, who owns Families Thriving, and that's a local real estate firm, and the builder is Visions Builders and Associates.
Yes, thank you for that. Council members on the committee, did you guys have any questions? I don't know if that answered your question, Councilmember McCoy. Any?
Yes, it did. Thank you for giving me that presentation, because I was just trying to figure out where this piece of property came from. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Councilmember, there are bits and pieces still in the city's inventory that was not moved to the land bank, given that they had the requirements for the city to make sure that the federal rules and regulations were observed.
So just so I understand, so the city had this piece of land. We tore down the actual building property that was on it. So it's just an open piece of land right now. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the area. I got to drive by. But so just an open piece of land right now. And then Families Thriving LLC was one of, you said there was no RFP?
We did request for proposals, and we had one respondent.
On one, and that was Families Thriving LLC.
Yes.
So they responded. And Families Thriving, I guess y'all can talk a little bit more about what y'all do or what the plans are. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I would love to I'm curious about that part.
I have a picture of the lot.
Oh, okay, perfect, yeah. It's in here? Oh, no.
I don't know if it's in there or not.
Oh, thank you. Yes, we can open it up. I don't have any more questions or comments from any of our council members. We can open it up to Families Thriving LLC. If you can introduce yourself, that would be great.
So my name is Tanya Williamson. I'm actually the owner of Tanya Associated Business Services, which Families Thriving Tabs, we call it Tabs. Tabs owns Families Thriving. That is our real estate portfolio. We have 18 years in real estate and business development. So we actually acquired a property on Vandiver Avenue, just about 3 doors down. We upgraded that property and partnered with WHA. Actually we could get rent for about $1,800. We put it on the market for $1,610 and partnered with the CNI project that they have to relocate displaced, or I don't want to say displaced, but individuals that had to move out of the Riverside area and get housing. So we provided affordable and quality housing. Because of the upgrade that was done to the block, several neighbors were quite impressed with the work. We got in 40 days, we got out. In less than 60 days, we had placement of a tenant, and we vetted them heavily. And as a result of that, the vacant spot, the residents said, "Would you purchase that?" Is sitting there lying dormant. We also had the neighbors adjoining offer us to purchase their additional properties as well. So we said our next step was to go ahead and acquire this lot. We reached out to WHA with their Yellow Brick Housing Program that they have, where they convert rentals, individuals on Section 8 vouchers that have rentals into purchasing homes. It flips on the other side, so they pay for mortgages up to 15 years in partnership. So we agreed to set aside this specific property and partnership by doing new construction. Our engineers have been out there, so we can only do a 2-bedroom with a den. And we got approval from Land Use and Planning to bypass the use variance process because of the prior demolition that took place there. So we've done our due diligence, and so we want to hit the ground running to do the pre-construction and pre-development and Q1 so we can break ground by March.
So this will be another property for affordable
It's solely,
rentals.
exactly, solely for affordable housing and also to help with the revitalization initiatives.
Of that neighborhood,
That's
yeah.
going on right there to align that block, specifically with what's happening over in the Riverside Reach project.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Any questions from council colleagues online, in person? Any public comments? Do I have any online? Any public commenters? No,
Yeah.
not hearing of any. None in person tonight. All right, so this is a piece of resolution. So this will move to our December 4th city council meeting where all 13 of us will vote on it.
Okay, all right. We just want to thank Councilwoman Oliver for supporting it and providing us with a letter of support. And thank you, Director Bob Weir and Tom Ford.
Yes, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Do you have any contact information you can leave if any council members have any questions? Oh, they have it? Okay, cool. Yes, no, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we're going to move to back to the top of the agenda. I know Councilmember Oliver, you're asking to leave, right?
Yes, thank you.
Of course. We'll start off with ordinance number 25-068, an ordinance to amend Chapter 34 of the Wilmington City Code to authorize a voluntary rent escrow program. And the sponsor for this piece of ordinance is Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you. So this ordinance, actually, it is a brand new ordinance. I want to thank my colleagues for their patience because I had an ordinance on just a little over a month ago. I think it's been just about a month. And unfortunately, that ordinance was vetoed, but we were able to bring something back to still address the issue of the escrow program. So I do want to make certain that my colleagues are aware that there is a difference between the two ordinances. Hold on, sorry. Where'd it go? I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my stuff together. Okay, so first, I want to let you know that there are still similarities from the two ordinances, and they're basically we're still the city is authorized to establish a rent escrow program for the residential tenants living within the city of Wilmington. And then also the other similarity is just it requires the confirmation that the tenant still provides the landlord with written notice 48 hours to correct the violation. That's pretty much it. What has happened is the administration was very uneasy about the ordinance that was presented a few weeks ago, and so what I've had to do is I've actually had to go back and tie up some of the loose ends. They wanted to make certain that they did not leave themselves open to issues or litigation and things of that nature. So these are the things that was worked on. These are the differences. So they definitely wanted to clarify that this does not supersede or replace rent withholding, through the state bill. Also, we want to it limits the participation in the program to tenants who decide to rent withhold and only under when a landlord fails to provide the hot water, heat, water, and electricity. So the thing that makes it basically a space or location uninhabitable here within the city of Wilmington are the things that we are going to address like right away. So you can still withhold your rent, but it won't be in the escrow, in the voluntary escrow program with the city if you need it for anything besides those four things. The next thing is it allows the city to contract with a third party to administer the program if it chooses to do so. So what we've done is the city has made me aware that they would like to have the option to try to have a third party do this. Now, if they cannot find a third party, because they will put out an RFP, and they have been making calls, they still will take this on. So there's actually two options when it comes to, if you take a look at it, when it comes to the fiscal impact, there are two options because it lets you know how much it costs if they get a third party and how much it costs if the city has to take it on. Let's see. It does not. This one does not require a tenant to be current on their rent. to use the city's program. So this actually makes it a little bit more easier for the residents here within the city, that you do not have to be directly current on your rent in order to get the things that you require, making certain that your place is livable. And it requires the tenant to obtain an inspection from L&I to confirm that the rental property lacks the hot water, the heat, the water, and electricity. One of the things that I actually, pushed back on was to find out whether or not, if there's an issue with these things, will we be, if they're stating that they don't have it, we know that the city will only give you so much time to be in a house like that. So I'm like, will they be able to have an inspector out there in a quick enough time frame? And they say yes. If there's any type of emergency like that, they can have an inspector there within 24 hours. So that did make me feel like, we'd be able to get that taken care of. And then it requires a deposit to the city or third party account, which must be in the form of cash, certified check, or money order. It just clarified how they will receive funds. Um, and it also allows the tenant to continue placing funds in escrow beyond 60 days, because the initial piece of legislation kind of kept it at 60 days, believing that we'll be able to get things corrected within that time frame. But they've been a little bit more relaxed about that, and they're like, if they need to have longer than that, they're able to. Let me see, what are the other things? Provides a release of funds to the tenant upon written termination of a lease, if need be. Provides release of the funds to the landlord if required by the court order or joint affidavit. And it provides for the return of funds held in the escrow account to the tenant if the tenant fails to continue making required monthly deposit. So if, for whatever reason, if the tenant is no longer able to make their deposits to the account for their rent on a monthly basis, if they're still stating that this thing has not been corrected, we cannot just hold this money indefinitely or whatever if they're not taking care of things on their end. We just have to give it back to the tenant, and then that is actually, it's no longer in our hands. Um, and it removes the requirement that the landlord has to be referred to the law department to be prosecuted. So those are the things that actually I had kind of like had jotted down and sent to me to make certain that I understood what the differences are. The other thing that I don't have in front of me is the actual fiscal impact. The last ordinance was 300,000 is what they believed the fiscal impact was going to be, but this ordinance actually shows 204,000. The reason why it actually went down is because where they thought they were going to have two people. This is for if the city takes it on. They thought they was going to have two new employees added, and then also upgrade to their like software, their programming. But that we no longer need two. We will only need one, but we still need the upgrade. And then the 4,000, I think, is to make certain that we have placards created, which is the little thing that they hang on your door to make certain that any new information that has to be given to the tenant, we can hang it on their door. The other option is 104,000. I think that they have it as, because we still need the placards, but I believe 100,000 is what they believe that a nonprofit who's pretty much already, we've seen quite a few who are already handling issues with people with housing. If they were to take this on, this is basically administrative work for them, and to see whether or not they're able to do so with these amount of funds. So those are the changes from ordinance A to now ordinance B, and I hope that I'll be able to still get the support for this voluntary escrow program.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember McCoy. Do any of our council members who are on the committee have any questions, comments? Any council members not on the committee who have any questions or comments? All right. Well, we'll go ahead. We don't. Oh, Councilmember Owens.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad to see this come back up. It does seem to be changed quite a bit, but this looks like a first good step in the right direction. I did have one question. So I see that like mold isn't included in this. Is there a reason why?
Yes. So the reason why the mold is not included is because we have anything that the city deemed it to be uninhabitable, like quickly having someone get out, have to leave that space, or can basically be considered condemned or something, are just those items are what they're going to be using for the escrow program. Now, mind you, this is just to do the escrow, the voluntary escrow program. If people still want to withhold rent for the other things that are listed on the state, bill, then they can do so. But to be part of the city's escrow program, it's only going to be these four things.
Follow up.
Yes.
So again, it's just what the city can enforce, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Can I be added as a co-sponsor, please? That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Owens. Any more?
Councilmember McCoy, thank you for your persistence in working on getting a rent escrow program back into the city code, and I'd like to ask to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you. I do have one question. So I want to be added as a co-sponsor, but I also know the state is currently working out their legislation around lead inspections and whatnot. So eventually, will we have to, are you familiar, or will we have to update that? Will lead be something like, if there's a presence of lead in the home, be one of the reasons where someone could possibly hold their rent? Do we
Now
know that
that
yet?
actually, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilmember McCoy.
Okay, so that I would actually have to find out when the state actually presents that legislation. The thing is that we needed to make certain if the state is going to make it where lead is something that you cannot stay in your home, make it uninhabitable, then it's something that we can
We can
address. But
add.
if that is, yeah, but
Okay.
if that's not the case, it probably won't. But if the state makes it where though you cannot stay in there as long as there's lead in the home, then we would probably be able to add it. Anything that the state does basically supersedes what the city has.
Right. And the only other thing I would think of, I know that we can only do what's enforceable, like by law, for our escrow program. But I think the issue is people don't know where to go to do escrow for the other things. So I don't know if we could do some education along with this program. Like, okay, we cover these things, but if there's mold in your home, here's a list of banks or places you can go to, and this is the process to do escrow. Because I remember when I was trying to do escrow a long time ago with one of my landlords, I just didn't know what to do. Like, I just didn't understand, like, where do I go? What bank do I go to? Do I hold the money at home? Like, what do you do for escrow, and how do you like do that in a proper way? And it wasn't clearly written out how to do it. So I don't know if once this is rolled out, if the city would be interested in just making sure that they're educating people about the parts that we don't cover.
If I may,
Yes.
okay. So education and those placards are going to be a part of it, making certain that people are aware that we will have the program once the program is actually up and running. We want to make certain that people are aware that we have it. Even though I don't believe that we're not holding ourselves or handcuffing ourselves to like March, like the previous ordinance, but the whole time we'll be definitely checking the data and seeing where we are and seeing uh, how many people are actually responding and using the program. It's really good to see, who actually knows what's going on. The fact that the biggest argument or pushback that I have from the city and some of my colleagues is the fact that we already actually that did not get vetoed, which was when I asked that that whole lease tenant agreement make certain that they have that information every time they're signing a new lease, or that the landlord, that the tenant is getting that whole information and also adding some other things to that. The landlord should always make certain that the tenant is able to contact them, not just not just their third party or if they have a manager, but them as well. How are they going to make certain that they know to give them notice? And it has, how are they going to get the notice if they can't get through to anybody? So it's just certain things like that. We want to make certain that that's why it was considered a companion piece, because we had to make certain that the landlords and the tenants were both aware of what their rights and responsibilities were.
Yes, thank you. I think, is someone's hand up?
That's a member of the public, and then Councilmember Bracy has joined us virtually.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't recognize Councilmember Willauer. Sorry. Councilmember Willauer is here. And then we also have Councilmember Bracy, who just came online. All right. So I don't think I have any more council questions or comments. I'm going to open it up to the public. I thought I saw someone. Oh, you're from LNI? Oh, okay. You want to make a comment? You want to talk to the legislation? I thought I saw you getting up the first time. Oh, no. Oh, okay. I thought you were about to get up for a public comment. All right. Well, this is an ordinance, and we don't have to vote. Oh, public comment online. What's their names? Who's the first person that can go? Yes. If you could introduce yourself, you have 3 minutes, and at 30 seconds, I'll just give you a warning.
Hi, Victor Cushman. I only need about 10 seconds. Could some of the fiscal impact be partially covered by a charge to landlords? Obviously, they're non-performing. It will have been more than 48 hours. These are not good folks, so they should also have a penalty of some sort. I wouldn't call it a penalty, but I would say a fee, which they could pay and maybe lower the cost. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Our next public commenter, you have 3 minutes. At 30 seconds, I'll give you a warning.
Hi, my name is Calvin Davis Jr. and I rent in Kobe Owens First District, and all the tenants here are behind in rent because of the same reason, late fees. And I like to ask the question: how do we know how these people are tabulating our late fees? Because they won't give us the information that we need. And is there some type of recourse for excessive penalties? Because it seems very excessive. And like they say now, I owe $2,200, and I have my receipts, and I owe about $725. So they're saying like $1,500 worth of late fees. I think that's very exorbitant. So are late fees included? And if so, does anyone have any suggestions on how I can rectify the situation? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for both of your comments. Do we have any more online comments? So we have your questions. I don't know if anyone wants to answer any of those things tonight. But if we're not able to, we have your information. I know Councilmember Owens just requested for your information. So we'll get back to you on answering the questions. But I know for the rent escrow, their late fees isn't something that's being addressed in this current legislation, but that's something that we definitely can talk about. So I think we're good to go. I don't think any more comments or public comments or comments from City Council. So that is an ordinance. It will move to our City Council meeting for December 4th. That's where it will be heard, right?
I think we need to vote out.
We don't have to vote anymore, right?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't have to vote out ordinances or resolutions. So it will just go on the December 4th City Council meeting. Or are we supposed to still vote for the record or no? I don't know. That's why we need an attorney here.
Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Um,
please.
so- Yeah, so for your ordinances and resolutions, they do not have to be voted out of committee. So the only time there need to be any type of official vote on anything from council persons is if there's some type of like amendment or motions that you wanted to make to legislation.
Got it. Thank you. Alrighty, so we'll move to the next item on the agenda. So this is the council member Cabrera asked for me to present on her resolutions too, or does she want them held?
She didn't say anything about holding, so.
Okay, all right. Her Councilmember Cabrera has an ordinance and 2 resolutions. Her first ordinance is to authorize and approve 4 one-year extensions of a professional service agreement between the City of Wilmington and Northeast Bucks and Company, TNA, Mullet and Lenarga Associations, Inc. So I don't know if anyone is here to speak from it. I guess this is probably something from the administration that was given down to her. Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair. The ordinance that we're discussing is the request to approve 4 one-year extensions to a contract that we are currently under. Northeast Bucks, they do business as M&L Associates. They provide professional technical services to the city and real estate and housing with the administration of the federal grants program, including CDBG, HOME, ESG, and HOPWA. In addition, they prepare our required 5-year comprehensive plan, our annual performance reports, annual plan, and environmental reviews as required by HUD. The original contract that we are under currently was a result of the request for proposals that was released in September of '24 for Housing and Community Development Services. The current contract is 1 year with renewal options. The renewal options are approximately $80K a year. My apologies, because this really should have been brought before council in the summer, and I had a medical leave situation, so the timeline is not perfect. But as far as this is all part of real estate and housing streamlining, when we brought this company in, we felt that that was high-quality information, high-quality performance, and was less than what would cost us to have a staff professional. So when we talk about the extension, the reason why we're requesting a renewal option for 4 one-year extensions is mainly because it addresses the 5-year comp plan. So that if we brought someone in new, they would have to start from scratch. It would cost us probably $140,000 or $150,000 a year to do that. So in some ways, we are locking in our fees. We're reducing the costs and the administrative burden to the law department, real estate and housing, and the council in reality. I think that they do an excellent job for us. We probably are underpaying as far as at the end of the day. And the extension request basically just keeps a consistency that we would not have otherwise.
Yes, thank you. Any questions from any council members? Are there hands up online? No, okay, we're good. In person, any questions? Well, it's an ordinance. Any public comments? Sorry. No. Alrighty. So no public comments, no city council comments. This is a ordinance. We don't have to vote it out, so it'll be on the December 4th legislation. Are you speaking to the next 2 resolutions too?
No, I am not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So the next 2 pieces of our next 2 pieces is a resolution approving the Department of Land Use and Planning's grant application to the Delaware Department of State Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs for a federal fiscal year 2024, city fiscal year 2025 pass-through grant Ready to get started
okay.
whenever you are, yes.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, council members, present and online. I want to thank all the committee members, council staff for the opportunity to present today a little bit about license and inspections. I also want to take the moment to thank my staff. Many of them are here today, continued support, dedication during this transition. And also, I want to finally thank Mayor Carney for trusting me with the leadership of the Department of License and Inspections. His administration's priorities, along with the recommendations from the transitional team, have guided much of the changes that are improving and changes that are happening now with license inspections and a lot of things that are being implemented. Since my appointment in license inspections, my focus has been to taking a hard look at how we operate, how we serve our residents, landlords, and tenants, how we can be more effective and responsive. We recognize early, and I recognize early on this meaningful change. It starts within, right? A lot of the things that needed to be changed had to be changed within our department. This improving a lot of our internal processes, building better communication, and ensuring that our department is not only enforcing code, but also providing guidance, education, and support to our community. Our goal is to be seen not just as enforcement agency, but as a partner to the community, one that values customer service, transparency, and collaboration. We want to help people understand our code, our limitations, and our role in maintaining a safe and healthy city. And we'll do that through some housing code enforcement. And this presentation that I'm going to present now, it outlines a lot of the steps that we've taken. And we can go ahead and move on. Right. So our vision statement to our department, the Department of License and Inspection is responsible for promoting the general welfare and protecting the lives, health, and safety of all citizens in Wilmington by monitoring city building and housing stock through code enforcement and the abatement of code violations. This is achieved by implementation of fair and unbiased application of the Wilmington City codes. Our goal is to facilitate voluntary compliance by working in partnership with our constituents. Next slide. So these are our core responsibilities from license and inspections. Currently, one is we enforce residential property. We do residential property enforcement. Residential property complaints, we handle instant tickets, public nuisance properties. We handle vacant properties, residential and commercial registration of these properties, residential vacant property enforcement, vacant property maintenance services. 3, residential rental property enforcement, rental property licensing, unit registration, rental property inspections. And 4, we do a mobile food truck program. This program is limited to the spaces that are owned by the city. So we handle the licensing and permitting for these designated locations here. I do want to note that, you know, as the new commissioner, probably not that new now, right? Almost a year into it for license inspection. It's my priority to educate the community and the roles and the responsibilities of our department. I personally have attended many civic meetings, numerous neighborhood walks with elected officials, with city staff, community leaders, and have attended all of Mayor Carney's town hall meetings. You know, my goal is to continue to communicate with the public, with the community, civic leaders, attend the meetings quarterly. If I don't attend, staff is there or someone from the mayor's office is there to report back to me. And I think that's really important because it's really important for us to meet people where they are and see what concerns they have. I think that's something that is new. It's something that I take a lot of pride in and kind of want to relay that to my staff, right? That we have to be present. We have to know what the community needs and how we can help them, right? Because a lot of times, you know, I'm going to talk about how our complaints come in, right? Our complaints normally come in through 311, most of them. Right, they come from all types of complaints, interior, exterior. We have tenants complaints that come in through 311. Some of them come in and they're on call, right? They call in to our office, and they range from interior complaints to landlord issues. We talked about some of those landlord issues and just in the ordinances that looked like they were passing or moving forward. A lot of these complaints come from you guys, from the elected official. People people in your community are escalating these complaints to you, and they're coming to us. And a lot of time is, a lot of the good work that I believe that our staff is doing now, right? It's the on view, the proactive, the driving around, the seeing stuff, and just being proactive in what they see in the community. And, I also want to mention we have an on-call service. We have an inspector on call 24/7. So they cover the after hours when their services are needed. And a lot of times those calls are being called in by Wilmington Police or Fire. So we can get into the next slide. So my first 90 days was, my primary goal was to come in and evaluate the department, focus on these specific areas, not to make a quick change unless they needed to be made. I wanted to understand all of these processes. I wanted to understand the current processes, why we do them, why we implement them. And again, I talked about the community concerns. I wanted to go out and I wanted to meet the community. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to talk to council members and see how we can establish a relationship to come and see where issues were. These are the 4 key areas that I'm going to talk about, and what we found doing these key areas, in these key issues, and then what we're doing to address those things. We can get into the next slide. So can we just go back to the last slide? I just want to talk a little bit more about that. I'm sorry. So staffing, I'm going to address some of the key issues that we found, but then I'm going to kind of elaborate a little bit more on what we're doing to improve those. So some of the staffing issues that we found were long-term supervisory vacancy. We had some issues with members that were injured in our staff, so it created some shortages. And then code enforcement, right? Some of the code enforcement stuff that I found was, we had a backlog of a lot of open violations. And a lot of it had to do with the staffing. A lot of it had to do with the way the inspectors were assigned and how they were being deployed. And some of it was the inability to access properties. There were complaints that were open or violations that were open for so long that we just couldn't get back into properties. I think one of the biggest issues that I found that was a lot of the work was a kind of reactive approach to addressing some of the community's concerns. We were sitting back and just depending a lot on 311 and people calling in complaints. Some of the rental issues that we ran into was the lack of the rental license and a registration. A lot of landlords don't have licenses. A lot of landlords hadn't paid their licenses. A lot of landlords didn't have their units registered. We were answering these calls every day, but we weren't looking deeper into the issue, right? We would answer a landlord complaint, a tenant complaint, and then we wouldn't dig deeper of is this property even licensed, right? Is this property even registered? So, and then the rental inspections, right? How we got into the rental inspections, how were we able to get in and to these properties and do the inspections to make sure that the properties that were being rented out were meeting all the housing requirements, right? And all the safety measures that they needed to do before someone could rent them out. Some of the vacant property issues we ran into that we found doing assessment was that many of the properties were not identified on our list. They were vacant, but they were not identified. They were not current on our list. A lot of properties had been actively vacant without any active enforcement. So they were just vacant. They were sitting there. There were no open violations on them. There was no action. There was no action being taken to hold the owners accountable to actually start fixing their properties. There was some lack of communication between the property owners, right? There were some issues where we didn't have their information, they didn't have ours, and there was no communication between these vacant properties. Properties with unresponsive owners had a large amount of debt. So those were the issues we found with the vacant. Communication issues between the departments. There was no clear separation and responsibilities after the creation of land use and planning. So that was an issue that we found that a lot of people, and even today, and that's why I continue to be in communities and explain of like what are our limitations and what we do, not knowing that, you know, when the separation was made between the two departments is what department handles what and who's responsible for what. So that was one of the issues that we found. Outside of department resources and outside departmental resources were underutilized. There were a lot of resources that were at disposal, and I'll talk about them a little later. And then the last one was the lack of standard policies and procedures for our department. That one, I'll talk about that at the end. That has probably become one of my top priorities, and I'll explain why I think it's really important for that one. Next slide. So, you know, the city of Wilmington visited Lancaster, city of Lancaster, with many of you that are on the board here today. And the invitation was made by, you know, city council members to review the process Lancaster uses to achieve effective results in their housing enforcement. The goal was to identify the best practices that could help strengthen Wilmington's own enforcement and compliance strategies. So there was a follow-up. Following the visit, after we went to Lancaster, the Wilmington, our administration invited Mr. Nixon, who is the chief of building code enforcement for Lancaster to Wilmington. We conducted a ride-along. I spent about 4 hours with him out in the field in Wilmington, and later met with Mayor Carney and the chief of staff, Saran, to exchange ideas on how we can improve Wilmington license inspections operations and how their tools and our tools kind of aligned, but they were different in many ways. Next slide. From that visit, these are the key observations that we found. Lancaster's housing code support a more aggressive enforcement approach. They utilize shorter compliance timelines and a broader range of enforcement tools that lead to eminent domain. So their violations to fines to removal of licenses was quick. You know, they go from a violation to a vacant to a blighted property to eminent domain. Their process was so fast, right? That was one of the key observations we found. They also require individuals to properly license their properties. They give them, and what I mean is that their properties, their parcels are individually licensed. So because of that, it gives them the authority to suspend and revoke property licenses and rental licenses for noncompliance. So some of the takeaways what we found were both of our cities very similar in the enforcement tools that we have. However, Lancaster's approach demonstrated how consistent application and timely action can enhance compliance. A lot of these existing codes, you know, they exist here in Wilmington. Our processes and resources can be better leveraged to achieve stronger and more housing outcome. I am going to talk about that one a little bit. Some of the tools that we have that were kind of underutilized is we have resources in other departments. So we were not communicating. There were some issues that I found. Delinquent accounts is a big tool that we have that we were able to use and we'll continue to use. We have a nuisance property team. We have nuisance property, you know, codes that they don't have. And, you know, just building those relationships. But I do want to make this pretty clear that the goal is not to take properties from responsible property owners, but to work hand in hand with owners and landlords to achieve voluntary compliance as stated in the vision statement. I think, and I really believe that building a partnership and giving owners every opportunity to make necessary repairs. However, when there is no response or progress or improvement or communication with our department, we have to take action, right? We have to use the tools available. And that is, you know, issuing the violation, giving them a proper amount of time to be able for them to make the necessary repairs. You know, if they don't, then we lead to civil penalties. If they're not, you know, criminal charges. Recommend the properties to the nuisance team so they can be reviewed, and recommend the properties to sheriff's sale. To protect our neighborhoods, we have to do this, right? Unfortunately, we don't have to do this with every property, but there are many of those properties that we just have to escalate and, you know, ultimately take them to sheriff's sale or recommend them to sheriff's sale because we owe it to make sure that our communities are safe and our housing is healthy, right, for everyone to be able to live in. So I do want to make that comment. Next slide. So in January of 2025, when I came in, this was the structure of the department, right? So obviously, I was appointed as the commissioner. There were two supervisors, and one of them was vacant, had been vacant for a long time. Had been vacant, I want to say, more than 6 months. There was an administrative assistant who changed in March of 2025, and then again, changed again in October. And we had two code enforcement officers that were, one retired and one was off for long-term injury. And then we had one vacant position in our administrative staff there. Next slide. This is our current, staffing. We're, glad that we are fully staffed. We now have both supervisors have been in place since May, administrative assistants in place, all our code enforcement officers. If you notice, there are some changes that I'll discuss when we pull the map as the map changed a little bit, right? Code enforcement officers, before it was 17, and now they're broken up in different areas. And I'll talk about that on the next slide. So when I came in, this is what we had, right? We were operating on the 2000 census map. 17 inspectors were assigned to 17 areas throughout the city covering all 27 census tracts. Their responsibilities were for housing, code enforcement, rental property inspections, vacant property inspections, sanitation enforcement, and it was more compliant-driven investigation and enforcement, right? That's what we came into. Next slide. Okay, in May, I want to say probably about May, we made some changes, right? And those changes were after the 90-day assessment, right? 90-day assessment, new supervisor got put in, fully staffed. And, one thing that I found with the old process was that it created gaps in neighborhoods. When you had people that were off long-term, right? When they were sick, vacation, it created gaps in coverage in our neighborhoods. It delayed department responses, for us to respond to initial and follow-up inspections. The previous deployment, I found, right, it also caused the department to overlook vacants and rental properties, and as well as the community interaction that I believe is more important than anything, right? Because we had 17 members and a person was off, and then, just to name a couple neighborhoods, right? If someone is off in Brandywine Hills and that person is off for a week, there's no one in Brandywine Hills covering that area, right? You're pulling people from other areas to kind of cover that. So everything was kind of just, there were gaps. And then when you pulled people for special projects, then it left long gaps and for follow-up and initial complaints. So that was one of the issues that I received. One of the things that I found, too, in talking to the community is that a lot of the complaints that were coming in were being delayed, and a lot of it was the lack of enforcement. Now, I look at some of those complaints, and I talk to the inspector, and it's like, well, I was pulled on a special project. I wasn't able to go back, right, because we're working a different corridor for some reason. Based on this information, I decided to reorganize the department. And the new deployment strategy was implemented, and it started the second week in May, right? This new deployment allows for the investment, and I believe in designated areas leading to more accountability, right? And I'm going to talk about that right now. What we have is we have 11 area inspectors assigned to 10 areas throughout the city covering the 27 census tract. So that allows those inspectors to be proactive and complaint-driven, right? Not just handling everything, but the housing investigation and the code enforcement. They handle sanitation enforcement, all the trash, the junk and debris, the high grass, the weeds and vegetation, the animal feces, those complaints that we get in every day, right? That's what those guys are dedicated, those guys and girls are dedicated to those 11 areas. I had 3 members of our team come together to become the rental team. And their job is to work closely with our administrative rental team, right, every day. Instead of the rental team working with 17 different people, they're now working with 3. They're doing all the rental inspections. although everyone is trained to do rental inspections. So when there are overflow and there's, we have too many rental inspections, those area inspectors do rental inspections too. But these members, and they also do proactive rental licenses, and I'll talk about that later in another slide. Then we created the vacant team, right? The vacant team, 3 members of that team. And what they do is there's 3 teams throughout the city, and they work closely with the vacant code enforcement administrator and the administration. They also do all the vacant property inspections, and they do all the oversight on our current vacant properties and the enforcement. And they're able to investigate and see if there's new vacant properties. And we can go to the next slide. So this is the part where I'm going to discuss all the key issues that we found and what we've done to improve in some of these areas. So when I was talking about the staffing, long-term supervisory vacancy, the job was posted immediately, worked with human resource partner to fill the vacancy, and it was filled in May. Long-term injuries resulted in staff shortage. We continue to have constant communication with human resource department to utilize their resources to gain advice on how we can better handle the employee matters. We continued that relationship, and we stayed up to date with our employee status, and that made some changes there. Our administrative assistant was replaced during the first 90 days, and then again in 6 months. We hired a new assistant, maintained the older assistant for a few weeks so they can come in and transition that person. And so those were the staffing changes. Some of the things that we've done too in the staffing is, I mentioned that we are fully staffed, and when you look at the map, what it does is, well, you used to have a area, right? Let's go back to Brandywine Hills. There's an inspector that's assigned, a rental inspector that's assigned to that area too. And now there's a vacant. So when I have an inspector that is off on vacation, there is no coverage, right? There is no lack of coverage because that inspector knows that area well. They know how to respond to that area. We're not saying, if we have holidays come around, you have 2-3 people off, which is normal, right? Now you're moving people where you can have someone from Browntown work in Brandywine Hills, right? And you're bringing them across the city. So now what you have is that vacant and that rental and that inspector that's assigned to that area work together. So there's always 3 in an area. So that allows for us to, provide better service, right? And understand the neighborhood in which they're working. We also implemented working groups. A lot of these changes that I'm going to talk about didn't come from me. They came from the people that are sitting in the back, right? And they came from our inspectors. I developed working groups to allow the staff to provide input. I don't know everything, right? I'm new to the department. I'm looking at it from the outside, but I want to know what the inspectors were dealing with, how we can improve on these processes, how can we implement our policies and our procedures, and how we can direct our department in a good manner, right, to provide the service that that we took the oath that we were going to provide, right? Our supervisors have now, I believe, a defined role. Although they're both capable of doing the same role, we have, they switch. We have different supervisors provides different support, right? They're trained the same, they provide the same function, but some of their responsibilities are different, right? And it also allows for one to step in to do the work when the other one is not around. And I think that was really important, right? The supervisors hold weekly meetings. They held one today, right? Sometimes weekly meetings with smaller groups, monthly meetings with the whole staff. And this provides a space for them to address the concerns and provide support to the people, to the members of our department. And this is continuous, and this is going to continue. I think it's important for us to do that, for me to step out of the room and have the supervisors talk to the inspectors so they can kind of grow and kind of give their feedback. And I'm in the community. I'm with the inspectors, right? I'm not in the office every day. I'm in there, I'm out there doing inspections, I'm writing violations, I'm seeing everything that they're doing. So I think that that was really important. I think that's part of the staffing changes and the direction in which we're going. And that also allows me to talk to the inspectors one-on-one and kind of just talk about the expectation of like how we want to go and how we want to talk to our constituents and the service we want to provide. So next slide talks about code enforcement changes. So previously, the department, I believe, was a little bit more reactive, responding to community complaints and concerns, and special projects caused gaps in coverage, right? This prevented the inspectors from constantly following up due to inflated workload. And I talked about throughout the city, right? That inspector that's going from Browntown to all the way across town. So the department, I believe now, is a little bit more proactively, and it's educating the community through the meetings, literature that we're providing, right? I think Councilwoman McCoy talked about some of the information that we're looking to provide to our constituents of like, you know, how we can benefit them, right? Engaging with community, with council members, right? And help finalize, we talked about the rental legislation, right? And how that provides the tenants more information and access to their landlords, so when they do have issues, they know who to call and make notice. I think a lot of these changes have led to what I'm going to show is at the bottom here is, you know, when I came in January, it was January 8th, we ran a report and we had 11,660 open violations, right? This is how many we had open. We currently have 6,131 open violations from the same time period. We had 5,529 violations that have been closed from the backlog, right? And that was done really in May, started in May. I would say January, but really this started in May with the redeployment. It led to civil penalties, right? Since January 1st, we've issued 4,217 new violations, and 2,328 of those new violations are still open, and roughly 1,900 of those violations have been closed. Some of them are open because there are either criminal, right? We've had criminal charges, or we have civil penalties. A lot of them are sitting on vacant properties, right? I think they discussed something earlier. The gentleman that called in who said, you know, how do you enforce? I think he was talking about recouping the money. Well, when you have a violation and you give somebody a violation for 3 days and you go back in 5 and it's not done, then now that's a civil penalty, right? Each violation has a dollar amount and you issue that civil penalty. And then, not saying that you're doing it to recoup the money, but it's, you know, they either have to fix the violation or they get a civil penalty, and that money gets put on that property. So, you know, those are some of our numbers. I don't think that we would have been able to reduce our open violations, and we're doing this every day. I think today we probably closed more violations. 6,000 violations, right? Roughly 5,500 violations closed. And a lot of those violations were backlogged, and they were because there were inspectors that no longer worked with the department. Many of them hadn't worked here in 3-4 years, but they were open violations. The other one was there were violations from buildings who were demolished, right? And the violations were still open. And for some reason, there was no follow-up with these inspections. Many of them were in compliance. Some were so far out of the time to enforce that it was unfair to continue these violations, right, and continue the enforcement. So what we did is we go out and we close them. If the violations were still present, we would issue new violations, and then we start the clock over. Our department's goal is to ensure that the enforcement imposed by L&I is fair, and it's consistent across the board and throughout the city. We are not just trying to get, you know, penalize people, but we're seeking compliance. And if someone reaches out to us and say, you know, we need an extension, the goal is not to move forward with civil penalties. The goal is to work with that person and give them the extension and give them a reasonable amount of time for them to fix their issues that they have at their properties. I talked about the supervisors conducting the weekly audits. That's one thing that we do. They now run reports on the inspectors. They have weekly meetings with the inspectors, and they say, these are your open violations. These are 45 days late. right? We've also enhanced some of the software that we use, Salesforce. It now gives the inspectors the opportunity for them to see everything that they have open and run reports. There was a lot of training being done. There's a lot of communication with, like, the importance of follow-up, right? You issue a violation today, you can't wait 6 months. 30 days, you post a property, you go back and you contact the owner, you talk to the tenant, you do everything you can to get a hold of the owner. And if there's non-responsive, and then you give them the opportunity to fix it and you give them the days and they're not making the necessary repairs, then we move forward with the civil penalties, right? So I think a lot of these new processes and procedures have really helped with our backlog. So rental properties is another area in which we looked. Next slide. And this is some of the things that we've implemented, right? So the lack of rental license and registration, that's a big one, right? We changed the structure of our department. Now we have the rental team. We have 3 people dedicated to this task. And because of that, they work directly with the rental team, and this has really helped. We're more proactive in identifying unlicensed and unregistered properties, and I'll talk about how we're doing that, right? And some of those that we're doing is, we're doing research, right? We're going back at our complaints. Now when we get a complaint, a property can only be 3 things, right? It can be owner-occupied, it can be vacant, or it can be rental. If it's a rental and it hits our radar and they say, hey, I'm renting this property, there's a tenant complaint, the first thing we go is it licensed, is it registered, right? Because that's the first. If we find that it's not licensed, not registered, then we still address the complaint. That's the first thing we do. But then on the back end, we issue them a violation and give them 30 days to come into compliance. But what we also do is we run that owner's name. And we see that, oh, you own 14 properties and all 14 properties are not registered, right? So then we reach out to the owner. So there's a reason why you're not registered. There's a reason why they're not paid. Then we go there. We do some research, right? We look at rental websites. We look at signs. We're looking at Zillow. We're looking at house pads, real estate companies, right? We're doing research on who's advertising properties as rentals, right? And those are the tools. That's what the rental team has the ability to do that we weren't able to do before because we were just focused on, we had too much. Certain guys had way too much. We cross-reference the rental information with other departments. We researched 311 and Questa accounts and how they were linked, right? How you're linking your primary residence to 10 other properties. Well, you can't live in 10 places, right? So, you may live in one, 9 have to be rentals. So we cross-reference that information. We had this information. We've always had it. But because we didn't communicate well with other departments, and sometimes we didn't realize the software that we had, community outreach, talking to the community at the civic meetings and explaining to them, like, if you have a problem with rental properties, like, make the notification, right? Create the educational pieces, right? So those are the issues that we found. Lack of rental license. We're working with the finance department. Earned income tax is one of them, to review and investigate all the owners who have properties who haven't paid their licenses. They have a license. They're like, oh, I have a license, but it's not paid, right? So you don't really have a license, right? So they give you a license number. It shows up as active, but it's unpaid. So, if it's unpaid, we issue the violation. We get them in, get them into compliance. At the same time, we educate them, make sure they get their inspections, make sure that they get all the literature that we have to, teach them. But most importantly is educating the tenants. I think that's one thing that we're doing by going to the community meetings, is educating the tenants. And the tenants now realize that, hey, there's a requirement for my landlord, because the landlords know the requirement for the tenants. It's in black and white, right? They know the landlord-tenant code. They know what the tenants are responsible for. Now the tenants know what the landlords are responsible for. We updated some of the notification. We used to send letters to landlords. We used to send letters to say, you're unlicensed. Now what we do is we send a letter and a violation. A violation is nothing but, hey, you have 30 days. Sometimes they call in, they're like, look, I have to gather some information. I'm busy. I have a property manager. Can I get a couple more days? We give them 45, 60 days sometimes. We're not issuing the violations instantly, right? A big thing that we're doing too is the last bullet there is the rental inspection scheduling, right? Before properties in the city of Wilmington, every unit is required to be inspected every 2 years. If a building has more than 5 units, it's, I believe, every 6 years that it needs to be inspected. So we've changed the process in how we schedule these inspections, right? Before, we would sit around, we would just wait for the landlords. This change is happening starting here in beginning of January, beginning of the calendar year. And it's going to be very similar to, I talk about like the DMV, right? The DMV gives you a registration for your car. They tell you when your registration is due. They don't say, call us when you're ready. You'll be driving around for 10 years without your registration, right? You have a date, and you know when you're supposed to send your car to registration. We give each unit a date, each parcel a date, and we tell them you're up for inspection. We will be out this day. We're giving everybody 90 days, some even more. Once we get the inspection, they pass, and they have 2 years now, right? You already know you're going to get your date for 2 years from now. So we're no longer relying on the owners to schedule that inspection. We're also giving a little bit of flexibility, right? If you need to reschedule, if you're on vacation, you got to make some necessary repairs, that's fine. You can reschedule. But you're not going to reschedule for 6 months. You got 2 more weeks to reschedule. Within the next 2 weeks, after that, then we're moving on and we have to do the inspection. So that's really some of the changes in the rental property, rental properties issues that we found. Next slide, please, is vacant properties. So this is how we're addressing some of the vacant property concerns, right? So we found that a lot of the properties were not identified. We found some old lists in our system that had basically no status, right? We didn't know what they were. So because of that, we were able to put our inspection team to go out there and investigate these properties. We changed again, I mentioned the teams, right? We now have a vacant team of 3 inspectors. They assist the administrator. Proactive approach to identifying unregistered properties by utilizing numerous, just like we did with the rental, we're doing the same thing. We're working with Public Works and our sanitation division. If trash hasn't been picked up at your property in 6 months, it's most likely vacant, right? If you don't have running water, it's vacant, or if it's occupied, it's occupied unlawfully because there's no utilities, right? We cross-reference. We work with real estate and housing. We work with land use and planning, their zoning department, building inspectors, finance, delinquent accounts. So we use all the tools, and now working with other departments to make sure. Educating the public and property owners of the vacant property waiver process. That's a big one, right? What we're doing there is, I'm going to sheriff sales. I've talked to the sheriff, gave them information. We've developed flyers to explain the process. We've talked to the land bank. We've talked to people who are selling properties. And when you're buying a vacant property, those fees a lot of times are either waived or paid as settlement. The problem is that the vacant clock continues. So you buy a property in May, right, of 2025, come November 1st, you might get a vacant bill for $12,000, but you're the new owner, right? But you're going back to the first date that was designed so you can get people to move on with their properties. But there's a waiver request process. That person can come in and talk to us, request a waiver, give us their compliance plan, and we monitor them. We go out, something different that we do is we go out and inspect the property. We take pictures, right? And we see if there's progress. We meet. We had a gentleman today of a property that's been vacant for 10 years. We got him in a compliance plan. He came in today, showed us his permit, showed us pictures and how he's got drywall up, right? And, we're going to monitor this property because the goal is to get this property a certificate of occupancy and get people to move into these properties. So educating people, meeting them where they are, where they're buying properties, and explaining to them the waiver process. Some of the properties had been identified as vacant, but there was no enforcement. There were no violations. There was nothing that was moving these properties along. So because we have the designated vacant teams, they're able to conduct sweep. They're able to gather baseline of all the vacant properties. And what we did too is we implemented a vacant property standard inspection process to ensure that all the properties are being inspected the same. and that they're most current on violations. And the goal is not to kill people with violations. It's a vacant property is aborted. But there are certain standards that the properties have to have, right? They have to be safe. And we issue those violations, and then we try to communicate with the owners. Again, we updated the process in our letters just to provide us more information, emails, phone numbers, owners' information, property, who's responsible for the property. Next slide. Some of the other vacant property issues we found was lack of communication from property owners. So we restructured our pre-bill to encourage compliance and urge property owners to reach out to our department. We working with property owners to establish compliance plans. I talked about that to address renovation issues. We revamped our timeline for violations and compliance to ensure property owners had enough time to repair and make the necessary requests. Now, some of these properties have been vacant for 15 years, right? 10, some 20. We know that they're not going to fix these properties in 2-3 months. We're dealing with a lot of backlog. But I know that what I've walked into, this stuff was not, they were destroyed. Properties been, and sometimes these are new owners, right? So we understand that. So as long as they're communicating with us, they got that waiver. We may have an open violation, but a violation it's not going to move forward if you communicate with us and say, hey, I have my permit. Work is progressing. It's happening. And then what we do is we give them extensions, right? We document those extensions. We document those interactions with them, and then we give them extensions. We cross-reference our database to stay more current with the current owners. That's a big one because these properties change hands every day, right? So because of that, we have to make sure that we have the violations on the right owner, right? And we cross-reference that. We make sure that we bring the right owners to these properties. We make sure that they're not selling their properties to themselves in another LLC, right? And that they're communicating with us. We updated the notification and enforcement process. Again, we now issue violations for no license and no registration. That was for more registration when it came to vacant properties. And then the properties that are continuously lacking enforcement, like I said earlier, is, we push those to delinquent account and to sheriff's sale. That doesn't mean that they're going to go to sheriff's sale right away, but they start that conversation with them of like, hey, I need to act. Either I need to act or I need to sell this property to someone who's ready, willing, and able to fix this property. The goal is to get them to get the owners to fix the property or get it in the hands of someone who is able to fix the property. As long as we're not pushing them, they're not going to act, right? So, again, one of our ongoing efforts to address the longstanding vacant and blighted properties is, to make sure that we communicate with the owners. And I just want to make this clear that the properties that are being sent or recommended for sheriff's sale, when it comes to L&I, there are some criteria that I use, right? One of them is substantial outstanding debt owed to the city through the license and inspections, right? So debt owed to the city from license inspections. I'm not looking at any other debt owed. I'm looking at prolonged vacant and deteriorated properties. I'm looking at persistent nuisance conditions and negatively impact our surrounding communities. So these are properties that owe a lot of money. They've been deteriorating for years. They are creating a negative impact to our communities and our neighbors. And they're not only in violation of multiple city codes, but also direct conflict with the core priorities to improve the city of Wilmington, right? Namely, some of the mayor's priorities, and I'm sure they're the same priorities and vision that you guys share, right? Strengthen our neighborhoods, support residents, invest in public safety and affordable housing and infrastructure, right? As long as these properties remain vacant, people don't want to live in these blocks. The cost of service from Wilmington Police, Fire Department, just the public nuisance that they create. So when I look at these properties and they meet those criteria, and I physically go out to these properties in the morning, in the afternoons, in the evenings, they're being sent. I'm not looking at no other ways, but these are the properties that are being sent to sheriff's sale. Some of the communication, next slide. Some of the issues. I have 3 more slides, and then we're at it. Well, I got questions, right? So communication between departments, right? So that was one of the biggest things that I found, right? I've worked on improving that. I continue to work on it. We've established better policies to communicate between departments to ensure that we break down the silos, we work together, gain compliance of property owners. We're sharing information. We're building good lines of communication to lead the efforts to hold owners accountable for their properties. And we urge them to work on their properties, right, and to make the necessary repairs. Some of the departments are land use and planning is one of them. Obviously, you know, they were part of L&I, and a lot of the work that we do depends on, you know, the permitting processes, the certificate of occupancy process, their inspection process, and some of their zoning. Department of Public Works, I talked about sanitation, water department, obviously Wilmington Police and their community engagement division, Department of Finance when it comes to the settlement team, delinquent accounts, earned income, Wilmington Fire Department, Wilmington Fire Marshal's Office, and the Law Department. Working with the other departments, I believe, increased the property, you know, to help increase property status, consistent follow-up, and compliance, as I mentioned. The last one is lack of policies and procedures is one of the areas that I found. Next slide. And the department did not have policies and procedures to guide the inspectors on their day-to-day operations. Developing policies and procedures and standard operating procedures for the department is one of my top priorities. I come from a military background, paramilitary, 25 years with the fire department. I believe that standard and operating procedures and policies are very important. And because of that, I've made this one of our top priorities. We've implemented some of the policies. We have more since this was created, but we have mandatory posting in the way we handle violations, our daily inspectors and their logs, property maintenance policies, and the way we handle vacant and rental. I think that the lack of standard policies and procedures, it creates many issues for us. Creates inconsistency in enforcement. It reduces efficiency and productivity. It lacks the accountability and allows for subjective judgment, and it leads to accusation of unfair treatment. When we have inspectors that are doing things different because one person's been on the department for 35 years, one's been on for 10, one's been for 15, and they were trained by different people, and there isn't a set guideline, I think that creates problems for us. The potential that it creates for the inconsistent application of codes and potential of selective enforcement can damage our public trust, right? Making enforcement efforts fair and consistent to all communities is not an option, and that's why developing these are really important. And they're on the top of my list, right? Because the code is exactly the way it is. Our policies and procedures should be that way. Our inspection process should be transparent. The inspector, the landlord should know exactly what he is being inspected for when we come. So that concludes my presentation. And I just want to let you guys know that every one of these and everything else that happens in the Department of License Inspection, it's ongoing. The assessment, the evaluation. If something isn't working, we pivot, we move a different direction, but we keep the core focus and what our mission is together, right? There might be some policy changes, there might be some procedure changes, but the not enforcing the code equal is not an option throughout the city, regardless of who the owner is, regardless of who or where the property is. So a lot of these processes are ongoing, and they will be ongoing as long as I'm here. So I want to thank you guys for allowing me. I know it was long, but it was hard not to get excited about all the changes that we've made and all the progress that we made, and how hopeful I am for the future, and how we're going to all work together. And I think that, and I'm hoping that we're starting to see some improvement in our city so far. So thank you.
Yes, no, thank you. I'm going to open it up for council for any comments or questions. I see Councilmember Owens' hands is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So going back to the rental properties inspections, I know at one point in time that some of the high rises weren't being inspected. I know me and you talked about that when we both
Yes.
was going through the onboarding process at the beginning of this year. Has that changed at all?
It has not changed. Well, okay. We have not done our first high rise, but it is changed, right? So all rental properties in the city will be inspected, including high rises. Most of the high rises fall in that 6-year cycle. So what we're doing is we are going to make sure that we spread them out, because you can just imagine doing a building with 150 units. Although it gives us the ability to do a certain percentage within that building, it's a big task. If we did them all in 2025 and 2026, they would be all due 6 years from now. So the goal is to look at the ones that have the most complaints, and as we get in these complaints, is start doing them, right? And start doing this one. So January 2026, we'll do one, February, and then so on. So that way we just spread them out. But it is changing. I don't know why they weren't being inspected. I know that the code does not exempt them. The only times they're exempt is when it's a new building. So, let's just name one of the newest ones. It's Capano's buildings down over in Brandywine Falls. Those buildings have been built in the last 4 years. They're not due. So those are the only ones that are exempt. No one else is exempt from inspections. So that is changing. And I will let you know when the first one is, and it's all hands on deck. Myself, my supervisors, and all the inspectors will be there to do that inspection, because we'll go floor by floor and do not every unit, but if we find that there are a lot of same violations in every unit, then we have to do every unit. But it allows us to do 10%. The code does allow us.
Got you. Follow up.
Yes.
I'm sure that some of these high rises you will find that it's going to be a lot of units. We had a health committee and aging committee meeting a few months ago, and multiple seniors came out and spoke about the living conditions that they're dealing with. The fact that Wilmington Housing Authority has not been responsive to some of their complaints. I've seen the email threads going back and forth between residents in their building. I've sat in on a few of these meetings as well too, and seen how the building staff has responded to some of these individuals as well too, and they have very real claims. You can go in some of these buildings and you'll see mushrooms growing in the hallway by elevators. It's not even in someone's room, right? So it's all different types of stuff going on in some of these high rises. With the department changing, my second question, with the department changing, so the rental inspections that you're going to be doing every 2 years and giving a certification, is that you stated that's new and that's going to be in place in January 2026, correct?
So what I stated is that's been code. That's
Okay.
the code now. I'm glad you mentioned the first part about the living conditions in some of the units. The code requires that each rental unit is inspected every 2 years, or I believe every 6 years or 5 years. I'm sorry. I get the numbers mixed up. I don't know if it's 5 and 6 or 6 and 5, but it's for multiple for high rises. What I found is certain tenants are not going. If you are dependent on tenants to provide you complaints, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. In some of these high rises, that's what we're dealing with, right? They're not going to call. Someone that is living has rent is decent. They have a voucher. They are afraid of retaliation. They, for whatever reason, are not going to put a complaint in. Sometimes those complaints are coming from a nurse, from a neighbor, or someone else, right? An anonymous complaint is coming in. So it's our duty, it's our requirement, the code says it, to make sure that we get into these properties and make sure that people are living in the conditions in which we all want to live in. Someone where I would put my grandmother, my mother in, right? So because of that, we need to be out and doing these inspections, right? That proactive part, and that's what's changing. That in January, we're no longer letting the landlord tell us when their inspection is due. Is we're telling you when we're coming. We're sending you a letter and saying, on January 15th at 10 a.m., we will be there, right? And you're there, we do your inspection. If you have violations, we give you a perfect amount of time to fix it. If you don't, that's the change that's coming. The code has always been 2 years, 6 years. So that's the change, and I'm glad you brought that up because I was away when I saw that meeting, and to hear people talk about the conditions they're living, and they're just not going to come out, right? And we can't depend on someone visiting them and making that complaint because sometimes it doesn't happen. So our goal is to stay on top of it, and again, that's why I said we're going to look at some of the buildings that have the most complaints, right? Those high rises, we're going to put them up front. Right, we're not going to go to those brand new, they just been open for 6 years, 7 years, and we don't get a lot of complaints. So thank you for both of those questions.
And just one last thing. So what you're doing come January, that's a internal policy that you changed as a director, correct?
Yes, that is. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other Councilmember Willauer?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner Pabon, for everything you've been doing, and also the inspectors. And the supervisors. I've had a chance to work with you directly, and I really appreciate, how the inspectors have come out to address issues that residents have brought up. So I really thank people for being so responsive and for all the changes that you've been working on. I do have a question about the rental inspection program. There's a bunch of rentals properties that haven't been inspected, and I know that in the past it wasn't happening at a rate where you're going to get to them. So how many rental inspections do you think you're going to be? What's your target for completion for rental inspections?
So when I look at, it's really hard to see how many rental inspections we have because again, we're working with the finance department now and with land use on how to capture the units, the number of units that we have. So first, I want to capture how many units we have in the city, rental units, right? And then look at the staff that we have, right? And that's one thing we started looking at is looking at the staff and saying, how many inspections can one inspector, do in a day, obviously considering travel time, their lunch break and everything else. And based on that, we're now creating a schedule. So the goal is, I don't have a target number. I know that in the budget, there was a target number of like 650 units. I can tell you that my target number is higher than that. I think we can do more than that. I think, especially when we're getting into these high rises. So first, we're trying to capture how many are registered, how many are licensed, and we're finding them every day, right? I mean, the number of units that are being registered now in the last couple of months, it's high. Now that we're getting them, we had someone come in today. We had someone come in, I think on Monday. They had 16 units. They scheduled all their inspections, right? So I can't give you an exact number. I wish I could. But I'm hoping that during the budget presentation, you'll see that number. And you'll see that the second quarter, the second half, the last 2 quarters of that fiscal year, hopefully you'll see that our numbers have increased. And then I can give you a more, definite number based on January to June. I hope that's I don't like to throw a number out there and then not be able to get to them.
Makes sense. Follow up.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You're developing a new system. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing, just because, you want to get through all, meet the 2-year schedule, you got to hit a certain number per year. So like half per year. So it'll just be interesting to see how that works out.
It is interesting, and I think that's something that I want to see, and be based on that, then we see if we have to restructure the number of years or do different programs. Other jurisdictions have different programs. When we were in Lancaster, you see that they have this good landlord program, and they have this 2 years for some were 3 years, some were 4 years. They were on different schedules. But that's something we have to, we can't really look at that until we get down the road and see how many properties we actually have and how many we can do. Realistically, we can do without vacating all our other responsibilities, right? Because in the summertime, we get a lot of complaints. But no, that's good.
So I just wanted to let you know that council, I know I'm interested in supporting the Department of L&I to develop those kind of programs so that, if somebody has a landlord with no violations, inspections great, that they could get a 4-year license or something like that, just so that you're not so that you can focus your efforts on enforcement with the rental properties that have problems. I think that's a great idea. So if there's legislative changes that need to happen, please work with council so we can make sure you have those tools. I did have some questions about the vacant property program. I think it is true, there are some real problem vacant properties, but then there are also some people who just get caught up in the system. So I know we've talked about this, but do you think it's reasonable for if somebody has a certificate of occupancy, like maybe they bought a property and maybe it took 4 years or something for them to renovate it, but they did get the certificate of occupancy, but the property had been vacant for, say, 20 years, and they somehow accumulated $20,000 of vacant property fees because they bought a property that had been vacant for such a long time, and then it took a couple years longer. Do you think it would be good to have legislation that gave you the opportunity to waive those fees?
I mean, I can't answer that now. I mean, there is opportunities to waive fees. I would just have to look at case. Vacant properties are, Bob Weir was here, and we had a discussion when I knew him before coming. I remember him giving I don't know if it was a trainer or something. He talked about vacant properties. I think I've used it before, him talking about vacant properties are like fingerprints, right? They're so unique. They're so different. The time you buy them, how long they've been vacant, what led to, and that was my 90 days. I was really looking at vacant properties. One thing that I found was that many of the vacant properties, I talked about the silos, right? Many of the vacant properties that were not listed as vacant were properties that our own department, unfit the properties because of a fire and never put it in the system. Right. So that's part of the changes that were happening right now. It's so they're so unique that I would have to look at every case by case. Right. And kind of talk to delinquent account and see the law department and see what I can do or what the city can do for those type of properties. I don't know what can be done. Right. I know that what is happening and what I found with many of those properties are the lack of knowing the waiver process and communication with the city. I think that is one thing that we're really, really working on. I talked to our administrator today with vacant properties, and she's like, I've been busier than I've ever been before in my life because it started November 1st. She said, but it's a good busy because now we are actually talking to people because people know that if you don't act on your property, there's going to be action taken. So now that we're moving in a direction of saying, don't be, and I think I said it, right? Don't look at us as code enforcement. Look at us as a partner. So we want to work with you. We don't ignore us. But if you ignore us, right? You get that bill home and you just let it pile up and pile up and pile up, and you don't call and say, hey, can I get a 60-day extension? Can we work on something? Can you remove some of these fees? I'm working fast. I have my CFO, right? I think that if you have one of those properties, I think they should reach out to us and make that request. And I would have to talk to my, supervisors and then kind of move from there.
Okay, that sounds great. I think because I've been contacted by a couple of people who've been renovating properties and just got kind of chewed up by the vacant property fees. And their point to me is always I want to invest that money in my property, not pay it in vacant property fees. I'm fixing up the property. I don't want to just be paying vacant property fees instead of fixing up my property. So I think we need to make any legislative changes there so that if people are doing actually fixing up properties, they don't we have a way, because the goal of vacant property fees is to get the property back into use. So if somebody's actually getting the property back into use, I just think the vacant property fees should be there should be flexibility around having people pay those vacant property fees. If they're meeting the goal of the policy, we shouldn't be charging them vacant property fees. But the other thing is constituents say that sometimes have you worked on improvements to the payment system? Because I guess the new payment system, it doesn't take a partial payment. So if you owe $20,000 in vacant property fees, you can't make a partial payment towards that? If you,
So I
is
think that
like-
was part of the Encuesta. The Encuesta does our payment for our fees, and I think was passed legislation about how the fees are applied to Encuesta. They're applied to the oldest debt. So when you owe L&I fees, you can owe fees for, vacant bills, instant tickets, property maintenance, and civil penalties, and they can total up to $15,000. If you make a $2,000 payment, it gets paid to the last debt. So now you go down to $13,000. You don't apply it to a certain bill, and that's how the payment process is. And that thing that believes that's for all payment processes made through the new Capricorn system. The only exception is when you get an instant ticket. When you pay your ticket, that money goes to your instant ticket immediately because we don't want to double. We don't want to put penalties on it. But that's a finance. Encuesta is a finance. That's software. But they can make. I think they have the ability now to make partial payments. Where they can't make partial payments from vacant fees is when they're looking for zoning and they're looking for other things, right? So if they're looking to rezone a property or they're looking for a waiver, the code states that all fees must be paid, right?
Okay. All right, well, hopefully we can follow up on that.
Okay.
And I do have one final thing.
Yes.
I still do get people talk to me about, listen, I just got a ticket or some code enforcement action on my, peeling paint when there's a property falling down next door to me that is not getting enforcement. Or people call in an issue and, it's a serious issue that they're calling in, and for some reason the inspector will give them a ticket for like a minor, very minor thing. And then the inspectors say like, well, I have to give the ticket because if I see something, I have to give the ticket. And I can't imagine that's true because there's just so many all you have to do is open your eyes in Wilmington and you see a code violation. So I just think it's what people say is they feel like they don't want to report things because it's just going to result in like a ticket for them. So I'm just wondering if that's something that you've heard that feedback, and if you.
I've heard the feedback, but I think that part of the going out to communities and talking to the constituents, what I've been doing is kind of just because you don't see action on a property doesn't mean that enforcement isn't happening, right? So if you're living across from someone, now has that been happening? Absolutely, yeah. I have seen areas where, that was part of my 90-day assessment, right? I'm riding down the street myself, right, 5 o'clock in the morning on my way to work. I do my rounds, and I'm like, right, in addresses, I go back and I see no open violations, right? And then I see a violation on the same block for a gutter, right? So that's the part of the training that we're doing. Those are the changes, right? That's what we're doing of like, okay, what's a warning, what's not a warning. Enforcement has to happen, has to be equal, right? But a lot of times what happens, what I'm finding is most of these people, and I know that the supervisors that are going to the community meetings, most of the people that are saying that when we pull them to the side and show them the property that they're complaining about, they realize they're like, whoa, I didn't know that was that much enforcement on that property. Yes, because it's not publicly, it's not on the public, right? You don't see it, but trust me that if you put that property on our radar, we're going to enforce it with the code, right? No exception. Like we're going to apply the code to it. So I hope that no one is afraid to call in complaints because that's not what we're here for. So.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank
And
you.
I do want to thank you again. Like
Thank
you're
you.
doing a tremendous amount of
Thank you so much.
work.
Thank you.
So everybody appreciates it.
Thank you.
Yes, I believe Councilmember Owens, did you have another question before we go online? Okay. Thank you. Councilmember McCoy?
Yes, thank you. So the only comment that I wanted to make is I just wanted to make certain that I got it clear. I think I recall that we had it where even though you do not, when you purchase a vacant property, you do the fees are not automatically waived. But if you actually fix up the property and are able to get, a certificate of occupancy, I think, in a year, that's when you can try to get it waived or something like that. So I think it's more so about not purchasing a property and hanging on to it so long, whatever, that you start like that, you continue accumulating the fees. I just wanted to make certain. I wanted to ask Commissioner Pabon whether or not I thought about that correctly. I just want to make certain that I got that information correct.
Yes, yes, you are correct. When someone purchases a property, the fees are not waived. The fees are usually paid at settlement, right? The old owner has to satisfy all the fees, right? Vacant fees, taxes, water bills, everything. So when you get the property, there are no fees. The problem with the vacant properties, and this is the educational, and I'm going to send you guys the postcards that we've made and we've been sharing with a lot of people. It explains that when you purchase a property, so again, if you purchase it this August and there's no debt, in November, you're going to get a bill for the vacant fees for that property. But you're also in that same letter where you get the bill, you're going to get, first you get the right to appeal, but you're also going to get a registration for vacant registration. So you're able to come in and request a waiver for those $12,000 saying I'm a new owner and these fees should not be applied to me. And I'm requesting a waiver. That's when we take their waiver. We take all the necessary documents, obviously the transfer, the deed. We do our investigation. And then we come up with a compliance plan of like, okay, what's the intent for this property? Like, what are you doing with this property? And then we monitor the property. That's what the inspectors do. And I want to say that we've been pretty successful since we've implemented. Like we have, and I would love to share later some very good, successful properties that people have come in, asked for a waiver, turned their properties around in 6 months. Those $12,000 are gone, right? Those fees are, so look at it as like that waiver is like putting a Band-Aid on a cut, right? And it's just like, listen, we're going to put this here, but you got a year to get this property up to standard and get a C of O and get people in it. If you don't, we're going to rip that Band-Aid off, and unfortunately, those $12,000 are going to be on you, right? And they're going to be on the property. So there's also opportunities for extensions to the waiver, right? If you got a waiver, you want an extension, and there's progress on the property, you're able to get an extension. So, yeah, Councilwoman McCoy, is that most people have up to 2 years. They can get up to 2 years to renovate a property without any fees if they're a new owner.
Thank you for answering that question.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any Councilmember Willauer?
May I be excused?
Oh, yes, you can be excused.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have a question about the vacant fee waiver. Is that policy online?
Yes, it's
Okay,
online. The link is on there. I'm gonna bring some postcards that we have that we share. We share at Sheriff's Sale. That waiver, the waiver document was enhanced. That was part of the enhancement of the documents, and it's also the waiver law is included in the vacant bill. Right. One of the issues that we have, right, and just to put it out there, is that a lot of people purchase their homes, and their homes are registered in Newcastle County parcel to a certain address. We are required, all fines, bills, violations are sent to the registered property addresses, the owner's address. They don't change their address. So their deed says they live at the property's been vacant for 15 years, and they're like, we didn't receive the bill. You didn't change your deed. Like, you've had this property vacant for 15 years. The bill was sent to you based on the city code to the right address. It's not, it's sent to you certified, and that's just it. So that's one of the issues we run into, but that's part of us getting phone numbers, emails. Now, it doesn't serve as notice, right? The proper notice is the form or the document that was sent to the official address. So we try to tell people, listen, if you change your address, you have to make sure you change it in recorded deeds, because that's what Newcastle parcels. That's the most important address.
Mm-hmm. And also online, is there the map with the coverage and who is in what area online?
No, because that map changes. Sometimes we move inspectors around. All of our inspectors' job requirements are the same, so we try to move members around. So them, we try to keep them in the same area, but typically the areas, we don't, some people know which inspector's in the area, but their inspector could be in the area now and like 3 months later, they're somewhere else. So
Okay.
because of it, we don't have the coverage.
Yeah, and but
I
as a-
could share a map with you. I can send you a
Okay.
map of like the colors of like how we added. We've made the change where like now the 10 areas are one color, and then you'll see team 1, team 2, team 3. And I can share that with you guys.
Yeah, even as like just a council, I want to have build relationship with whoever's like primarily in the second district.
Yeah.
I think that would be good. And
Absolutely.
then really quick for rental properties, I remember in a conversation you talked about streamlining and making the checklist public to what like a landlord, like every rental property, every landlord
Yes.
knows exactly what is going to be looked at. Is that done too?
That's not done, but that will be done by January by the time we start scheduling.
Okay.
Yes, we'll be sending, we now have a standard inspection. Right now, what you have is like everything is done by hand, right? Each inspector, and you have that trifold that each landlord gets. Now what they're gonna have is they're gonna actually have our inspection list, right? Exterior, interior, utilities, the same list, the code that pertains to that requirement it's a pre-check, right? It's a pre-check. Each landlord is going to be available online. They can take that. They can do their inspection on Monday. They know they have an inspection on Friday. It's like we're giving you the answers to the test.
Yep.
And that was one thing we talked about in Lancaster, and that's the
Yes.
transparency of like they should know what we are looking for when we show up. There shouldn't be no surprises, and we are trying to build. That's part of that relationship of that, like you know what we're coming, you know what we're looking for. You had the answers to the test, and if you get a violation, understand it's only a violation, right? It's not moving forward unless it's one of those hot items, right, where you need to, that you can rent escrow for.
No, perfect. I just have two more questions. So I know rental inspections happen every 2 years or more than 5 units every 6. The initial, isn't there an initial inspection once you get your business license?
No, so there is no initial.
isn't?
There is
Oh,
no
okay.
initial inspection. But what we're doing now is that if we have someone like we had one today, it's a new rental. He's like, what we try to tell property owners now is like, don't license your property until you're almost ready for your inspection. So that way you can register it and we can come out. We'll come out and schedule your inspection. And so his inspection is scheduled for Monday. Monday is the 17th. He knows that if he does the inspection on Monday, he's successful. 2 years from now, we'll be back on the 17th of
2 years
of
from
2020. Yes,
But you
but
said
there is no initial
there's
inspection.
no
No,
initial.
no, because a lot of them have already been inspected. If I own a property and I got it inspected last year and I sell it to Kobe, right? Sorry.
Councilmember Cole.
Councilmember Kobe.
Only for a long
I know,
time.
Councilmember. If I sell it to him, that property's been inspected. We don't need to go there. Now, when it's time to come back, we will notify the new owner that his inspection is up.
Okay.
It's correct.
Yeah, I think I might not be using the right word. So
Yes.
the initial was like the first ever.
Yes.
The one once I get, I'm a landlord. I buy a property. My first initial inspection. When does that happen?
If it's never been inspected, it's whenever you schedule it. We will provide it to you after you get your license.
Oh,
It's not pre-licensed. It's you get your license, you get approved by zoning, then we schedule it, we come out, and then once you have a successful inspection, that's your kind of like your born on date, right? It's like that's
Yeah.
the date that and that's my goal. My goal is to give every unit a date and then move from that date forward.
Is there a time period between the time I get like, okay, I'm ready, before I have to call you guys to get my inspection before I rent it out?
No, there is none. There is
There
no.
isn't?
Yeah, there is no. There is no. There is no requirement for that under the code. Yeah, there is no pre.
But if
There's
you
no
don't
pre.
have a business license, eventually you'll start getting the fees and fines, right?
Yes.
So it kind of.
Yeah, if we find out that it's a rental, right, and we find out it's a rental, and or we know it's a rental, then what we do is we send the investigative rental team, and then we issue a violation for not having it licensed or registered, and then the inspection. Then we tell them that we need an inspection.
And then my last topic or question is about, you were talking about like running name to do research about landlords.
Yeah.
Are you able to find them when they have multiple LLCs? So like they'll have
There-
an LLC for each
There are some
different-
tools. There are some tools.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, you can't find them all.
Yeah.
No, because they have different addresses, ownerships, partners. If I have a property on my LLC and then I have a partnership here and I have a partnership there and a partnership there, sometimes those addresses are different. So I don't really get into, I want to say that the shift, the mindset, and I guess probably because I'm coming from fire enforcement, is that we regulate properties, we don't regulate people, right? So the code speaks to the property. So I don't chase people, right? The property, it is what it is, right? It's a rental. I don't care who owns it. It needs the here are the requirements, right? Until it becomes an owner occupied, then those requirements change, or if it goes vacant. So as long as we can get a handle on what every property is the use for, then we regulate that, regardless of who owns it, right? I try not to chase people because you're never gonna find it. Once we have that date on that property, we regulate that property, the usage, and the date. And then we just move from there.
Well, no, thank you,
Thank you.
for being open. I know I suggested a lot of things.
No, a lot of it we learned we learned from each other, and a lot of it did come from our visits and from looking at conversations. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
For being open.
Thank you.
This is what Ellen and I needed. I'm looking forward to like the future, to like once we implement everything, like the impact that's going to have on the city. So just thank you for being you. And
Thank you.
I don't know if there's any public comments. We didn't do that. Any public comment in person? Yes, we have. If you could walk up to, or you could sit down too, to any of these mics, say your name, and at 30 seconds, I'll give you a warning.
Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Stewart, and my son goes to school in Wilmington. I'm representing him because he's interested in African American history, so that's why I'm here. But just from hearing from what I hear, I do have a lot of finance, risk management, and writing policies experience. From what I'm hearing him saying is, I think you can't have a home without rules, so you need like standard operating procedures. So before you even dig deeper into going into those inspections and all that, at least a basic standard operating procedures is critical for the council to have. Then that will make it consistent across the board. And then I think somebody mentioned about the 4-year, no, let's go back to the rental properties, I guess. For me, my dad owned a lot of properties, so we kind of did inspection. Every time somebody moved into the property, there's standard things that you have to do. You have to repaint the house, and they're just basic stuff that is needed, because to me, energy is everything. You want to replace the paint, and little things like that really matter. The carpet, even if I think you mentioned that 2 years, after 2 years, you'll be inspecting the house. So if somebody stayed in the house for maybe 1 year only, and the person who was staying before did not maintain the property, and I'm moving into the property, the landlord will say, I'm not fixing this because I'm not due for inspection. So it's unfair for the tenant who's moving into the property, and right now we have a crisis of housing going on where there are no houses. So I think it's only fair. Anytime you have a new tenant, there's basic stuff. Painting the house is not costly. It's going to cost very little. I used to paint the old property I stayed in and I rented. So little things like that, I think we should not give the landlord a leeway. They should just hold them accountable. If you have many properties, you bought them for a reason. Maintain them the same way. You should not be given a longer period of time. How did you buy the properties? Did you use the land bank, while you should have given other people opportunities to also buy those $1 houses or whatever it is? It's not fair. Everyone should be treated the same. Whether you have 1 million properties, then you should be able to sustain those properties. I mean, and I don't want to take so much of your time.
Oh, you're fine.
But as a community person who's on the ground, like kind of all over, I serve in so many things, and someone who's worked in banking, I think I can help a lot, But then, I've been helping in terms of volunteer, and it's too much. It takes a lot of my time. So if you guys need help, just let me know. I mean, I'm brilliant in so many things. I'm not here to praise myself. But rather than fight you guys, I can help, because there's a lot of things that is messed up everywhere. And I'm glad that you guys are seated here and taking that ownership and just wanting to have the change. There's some places like the Newcastle County that money is missing so much, and we see it, that is not willing to do such things. So I'm proud of you guys, that at least you're taking that ownership to just fix it. And the youth know more than you guys. You'll be surprised. So they talk badly about our generation, meaning we failed them so much. So how can we just fix it?
Yes. Well, I appreciate
All
your
I have,
comment.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, yeah.
I don't think I have any comments online. One? Okay. Yes. So I have one comment online. You have 3 minutes. At 30 seconds, I'll give you a warning. Thank you. Oh, okay. So she's not talking.
Okay, they both raised their hand now. Christina was one of the ones that signed up.
Okay. 3 minutes. I was about to say 30. I'm tired.
No, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for letting me speak. I'll be brief. My name's Karen Igo. I represent Northeast Rising, which is a community-led group of residents affected by flooding after Hurricane Ida. They're looking for help with flood remediation on the Brandywine at the 11th Street Bridge, asking that this be prioritized and included specifically in the Wilmington Climate Resilience Plan. The stakeholders want to have access to the river like others in the city do. The biggest obstacles we have found are funding, political will, and the city has their Public Works municipal yard for debris and trash cans. They're at the 11th Street Bridge. Moving the municipal yard is the priority right now, as Northeast Rising and the University of Delaware Water Resources Center have funding to survey, design, grade, and install a 3-acre pollinator meadow that would look a lot better than what looks now and would hold water when the Brandywine floods again at the municipal yard. It would be a first step towards the community preferred flood resistance park design, which includes raising the bank of the Brandywine at the 11th Street Bridge to 16 feet, installing a living shoreline to get the ecosystem back to its natural habitat for the wildlife that lives there, and to create a flood resistance park with community access to the river. I'm asking for support in prioritizing moving the 3-acre Public Works municipal yard to another property. A site near or possibly it's part of the Diamond State Salvage Yard has been identified, but not explored further that I know of. I heard that from Public Works. The area for the flood park is the entrance to this community, and it should really not be a debris and trash can yard. It's unfortunate. We know it's cheaper to mitigate flooding rather than cleaning it up afterwards. We have millions that have been invested in Northeast, and all these investments are left unprotected from flooding at this time. We do have our next community meeting with the city presenting about their flood study, which is a year late and still not completed, but we're grateful that they're at least working on it. They'll be presenting on December 11th from 5:30 to 8:30 at the St. David's Lodge, which is in Northeast at 15th and Claymont. You can find registration and information about that coming up on our Facebook page, Northeast Rising. But if someone could please help me by supporting our work with this first step of figuring out how to get this municipal yard moved away from the community entrance to
30
Northeast.
seconds.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm hoping I can follow up with some of y'all to see if I can get this issue on a future agenda for one of these meetings. And thank you again so much for letting me speak.
Of course. No, thank you for that comment. We'll definitely get in contact with you to discuss that.
Amazing. Thank you.
Of course. Our last online public comment, if you just state your name, I'm going to give a 30-second warning.
Hi, my name is Christina Panza. I am from the 5th District and I live in the Cool Spring Tilton neighborhood. I'm here to request that City Council, in collaboration with LNI, work toward clear, transparent property code and enforcement triage policies for residential properties. And what I mean by that is that there is in our neighborhood an established pattern from the past of LNI issuing citations for minor violations and at least seeming to ignore larger nuisance properties. On a recent neighborhood chat, the issue of LNI citations came up, and here are some quotes from people within my greater neighborhood. One, oh, the dreaded peeling paint citation. I thought we were the only ones. Please be careful. Once you get on LNI's bad side, they are notorious for targeting you. Don't complain or you'll get cited. We got a citation for our pre-flowering pollinator garden. I had a paint citation where the picture in front of my house had the stepladder paint and scraper out. I think they took the picture when I went inside to pay. Meanwhile, the decrepit house next to me has been a complete mess of slumlording and unpermitted work that has been cited many times. Somehow the owner gets away with it. A landlord's rented dumpster company left trash in front of my house, but we got the citation for reporting it. As you can hear, residents in my neighborhood are frustrated. My own experience highlights these frustrations. Myself and another neighbor have been reporting one property for excessive garbage and construction hazards for 5+ years. I got told repeatedly by inspectors in 2023 and 2024 that they couldn't talk about it because it was in court. Yet my 15-day FOIA request, which took 5 months, was 1 page of citations, and there was only 1 citation from 2015 to 2024. So I don't know where all of the neighborhood reports from 2021 through 2023 went. Most recently, the property was cited in May 2025, which did compel the owners to address 1 issue by October. The property passed compliance checks in November. However, as of today, there are 2 tires, a cracked Sterilite bin, 2 large pieces of plywood, smaller rotting pieces of wood, a plastic bin, the bottom of a dog crate, a pile of bricks, used concrete, rusting tools, trash in every corner, illegal invasive ivy, and a chain link fence collapsing with sharp exposed edges. In that same time period that I've been complaining about this property, I have received 2 separate peeling paint citations for about 2 feet of peeling trim, 2 weed citations for flowers that had recently gone by, and an instant ticket for a bookshelf I had gifted and removed before the ticket arrived at my house. One of my 2 garden citations, which was this July 2025, we caught on security camera. The inspector was literally on my block to ticket 30 contractor bags from a landlord left on the sidewalk that I had reported. But I still got a garden citation for weeds. I can provide example after example of this sort of discrepancy in code enforcement from across my neighborhood, as it's a topic of conversation at least twice a year. And my expectation as a tax-paying resident is that there are more reasonable and published public enforcement practices that prioritize real problems. I would love to live in a neighborhood where every house is in such great condition that the worst residential problem was small amounts of peeling paint around gutters, or that we could bicker over the definition of gardens and whose garden was more weed-like. But right now, there are so many more egregious property issues that need to be prioritized. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I know that Commissioner Pabon would love to probably speak to you.
Yeah.
If we can get your information over to him so we can discuss some of those issues. And I know the department is trying to move in a different direction. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councilwoman Willhauer has my information.
Okay, perfect. Alrighty, I think that's it for our public comments. There's nothing online or in person for city council. I think we're good to go. Any closing comments? You good?
No.
All right, well, thank you for that. And I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I don't know if we got
Second.
Alrighty, well, good night. It's been properly moved.